Landon, I'm going to let you go wherever you decide you want to here, but to throw you some stuff, I'm sure you caught a portion of that conversation. But hey, look, if the government's saying you can't sail, how are they able to do that without giving some fiscal support, as they're basically saying you can no longer operate your business? To Sean's point, if you can't operate these businesses at the capacities that were calculated out and the price points that were calculated out to make ends meet, then is it even worth sailing? And then beyond that, are people still willing and wanting to go out there and join these cruises in spite of everything going on?
Great questions, and you're basically explaining why these stocks are down about 60% from their January highs. That's the kind of stuff that scares investors quite a bit. I was looking at Carnival and Royal Caribbean, their websites, just to see. And Carnival, it didn't look like you could really book much until 2021, whereas Royal Caribbean, the way I saw it, you could book in, I think, July. So I think they're taking a different approach. But Royal Caribbean said that if you book, you can cancel within 48 hours of the cruise, like 2 days before your set sail date, and get a full refund. So I think they're trying to get people to do anything they can to think about booking a cruise. Now, when we look at the percentage of people that are talking about booking a cruise, it's kind of a purchase intent type metric, which we talk about a lot. It's just in general, people booking a cruise. We saw a huge, I guess what you would call a chaos bump around March, when people were talking about what are they going to do with the cruises that they had booked, or should they book, or should they cancel, all that kind of stuff. And then it settled back down. But what's really interesting is you'll notice that where we're at now on the far right of this chart is about 50% lower than where we were pre-COVID. And so there are definitely a lot of people pulling back their plans. I know that Carnival offered the ability to get a future cruise credit or cash back for people that had already paid. And about half of those took the cash, which honestly surprising. I thought it would be more than half, but that kind of shows you the mentality of people saying, you know what, let's just wait and see. It's going to be, to Sean's point, it's interesting. Somebody's got to go first. And to be first, and if you do have a bad situation happen, that's going to be bad for your cruise line. Then the other ones can come out and say, oh, well, we're going to take better steps. That's why we took longer. So it's a bit of a gamble to go first. It looks like maybe Royal Caribbean is the one that's going to go first. They do have a bit of a reputation of being a little bit higher quality, a little bit higher price, whereas Carnival's more of the budget cruise line. So maybe they're going to be the ones that can figure out how to sanitize and keep people healthy and not have a problem. But it's an interesting situation for sure.
And Landon, does this sort of, you need to overlay this in terms of purchase intent? Because usually when you go on a cruise, one, you've got to get to the port. So that also sort of by itself implies that you also have to be comfortable now flying. And then once you fly there, then you get on the cruise. Do you think, one, this will maybe break out between your age? Maybe if you're a little bit older, you might want to hold off a little bit longer. If you're younger, you're going to feel a little bit more willing to maybe step out there and accept a little bit of risk in traveling and then being stuck on the boat, which then if you're saying, look, it's going to be the younger crowd that's more willing to do it, are they, maybe their willingness to spend it just in terms of dollar amounts isn't going to be that high. They're looking for the cheaper deal versus maybe someone who's retired, has their nest egg, and has the money to do it. They're willing to pay up, but they're just not willing to travel. Do you see any sort of dynamics like that breaking out in what you're seeing?
No, it's an absolutely great point. I mean, when you think about a cruise demographic, you have the older crowd that has more money. They like a little bit more luxury. And of course, they're going to be the ones who are more likely to be affected by this COVID. And so they're likely to stay home. So that hurts, obviously, the cruise lines. And then you've got the younger crowd that it has less money just because they're younger, and they're probably a little bit less afraid of catching this or the symptoms of it. And so but they don't have as much money. So that's definitely a problem. I think on that regard, it may lean towards Carnival versus Royal Caribbean because they are the cheaper one. But I believe I'm seeing Royal Caribbean cut prices across the board. So I think they're aware of that problem, and they're taking steps. Another interesting angle here is, we've got the happiness up. This is how happy are customers when they're talking about these cruise lines. You can see that generally speaking, both of them were up in the 80, 85% and they absolutely took a beating around COVID when the quarantine started and people were getting sick and there's cruise ships stranding people and they couldn't get off, and it was just a disaster PR situation for cruise lines. But what's really interesting is that Carnival is basically still down, maybe starting to slide upward just a little bit, but Royal Caribbean is really bouncing back. So I think that there's some messaging going on here that is just better from Royal Caribbean in regards to how customers feel about these companies. And so maybe that has to do with the higher price point and the higher perceived quality. They're bouncing back sooner. Maybe it's because they are offering cruises sooner than Carnival. I'm not sure, but this is a significant chart. And this is just looking at this alone, I would be far more eager as an investor to think about Royal Caribbean than Carnival, because happiness is key. You've got to have people that are excited about going and spending money on your ships. And then, Sean, to your point, they can't mess up the first few weeks. They can't have a problem. So I'm sure they're going to be diligent, and I wish them the best of luck. But it's definitely, as an investor, there's probably a lot of places I'd feel more comfortable putting my money. But at 60% off, it's also a heck of a deal, because this could, a year from now, this could look like an extremely good buying opportunity. So it's tough to call which way it's going from here.
Yeah. Well, initial thoughts landed on this idea of the bookings is that maybe Royal Caribbean just trying to get some short-term liquidity and get some, ticket sales. But I want to talk about this happiness chart, because I think this is really interesting, because I think about cruises and cruise goers and how happy people who go on cruises are with their experience, yet all the negative headlines I've read about cruises for the last decade and all the horrible PR that these companies seem to get, only accelerated by the COVID-19 stories that were coming out. And I think about myself, look, no offense to people who like cruises, I'm never going on a cruise. I have no interest in it. It's never been something for me. I don't have the idea of doing that. But the cruise companies don't need everyone to be interested. They just need the people who already were going on cruises to still go back on them. So this happiness chart is very interesting, as you're seeing this break off between potentially two different clientele, and one, seeming to kind of be bouncing back and getting back to this normal sentiment around it, and the other one now finding maybe potentially a new level that's pretty extraordinarily lower, that could actually impact the overall customer base, the client base, and really affect the bottom line in a company that really can't afford to have any setbacks.
Yeah, you're right. I think that this may have a lot to do with the fact that Royal Caribbean is offering cruises before Carnival. But just in general, I think it's been Carnival as perceived as a little bit lower quality. But the fact that one is breaking out while the other one is sort of stagnant is going to be really interesting if this holds over the next month or two, especially after they begin setting sail. That this could be a big definer for the two companies. And to Sean's earlier point, I think cash is really key. I think that did a little quick research. Carnival's got about $2 billion in cash, where Royal Caribbean only has about $1 billion. So they may be better positioned to hold off a little bit and eat that $250 million a month, which is really a big number, but to be able to eat that and a little bit longer. So I'm not sure how long you're going to be able to take that. They're selling ships to try to make up for the cash shortfall, but all in all, definitely a tough time to be a cruise line company. But as an investor, again, I see that 60% off, and it just makes me wonder, a year or two from now, what if this all blows over and these prices, Carnival at 19 when in January is at 52, or Royal Caribbean at 60 when in January it was at 133. This could be a good buying opportunity if you've got a strong stomach, because it's not going to be easy to be able to stomach some of these swings and some of the headlines.